Energy Transfers in a Pendulum by KayScience.com. This here is a pendulum. I'm going to use a pendulum to show how energy is transferred from the gravitational potential energy store of the pendulum when it is lifted to the kinetic energy store of the pendulum when it is moving. This block here represents a table, so the pendulum is above a table. The pendulum has been lifted above the table, as you can see here. That means that the gravitational potential energy store in the pendulum is increasing. This box shows that there is energy in the gravitational potential energy store of the pendulum. And because the pendulum is completely stationary at this point, there is no energy in the kinetic energy store of the pendulum. So what happens when we let go? When we let go, the pendulum falls downwards and it begins to move. So if it begins to move downwards, that means that there's going to be an increase in the kinetic energy store of the pendulum. Where is that energy coming from? Well, the energy is being transferred from the gravitational potential energy store of the pendulum and into the kinetic energy store of the pendulum. So as you can see here, the gravitational potential energy store in the pendulum decreases because it is transferred to the kinetic energy store of the pendulum, which increases. It's question time. Attempt these questions to check your understanding. This is the point where the pendulum is going to experience the lowest gravitational potential energy because it's closest to the ground. Therefore, the gravitational potential energy store in the pendulum is going to decrease because it is being transferred to the kinetic energy store of the pendulum. So at this point here, this is where the pendulum is moving at its fastest speed. Beyond this point, the pendulum is going to increase in height from the ground. So this part of the diagram represents the gravitational potential energy store increasing in the pendulum. This is because there is a transfer of energy from the kinetic energy store of the pendulum into the gravitational potential energy store of the pendulum as it increases in height above the ground. For a moment in time, the pendulum is going to be completely stationary. So the kinetic energy store of the pendulum is going to be 0. And that is going to be transferred to the gravitational potential energy store of the pendulum, as you can see here. So the kinetic energy store of the pendulum is going to be 0. It's question time. Attempt these questions to check your understanding. This pendulum will not swing back and forth forever. The transfer between the gravitational potential energy store and the kinetic energy store of the pendulum is going to decrease with every swing. This is because there is going to be dissipated energy. The energy is going to be dissipated from the kinetic energy store of the moving pendulum to the thermal energy store of the surroundings. So that means the pendulum will end up coming to a standstill because there is no energy in the kinetic energy store of the pendulum. So that will be transferred from the pendulum to the thermal energy store of the surroundings. So that will be transferred from the pendulum to the thermal energy store of the surroundings. And we call this wasted energy dissipated energy. Press pause to practice using those key words. The answers will follow. Press pause to go through your answers and make any corrections to your mistakes. Press pause to answer the questions. The answers will follow. And if you're stuck, just re-watch the video. Press pause to go through your answers and make any corrections to your mistakes. Visit KayScience.com for more free videos, worksheets and quizzes, at KayScience.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe.